Malignant might be the most divisive and polarizing horror movie in the past 10 years. Not to say this hadn't happened recently, but normally on split opinions like this, there's a big intellectual property behind it. Really, the only thing this movie has going for it is James Wan, who has made a stellar career in horror, from directing Saw, Insidious, and The Conjuring, to producing basically all of the spawns of his ideas. What I'm trying to say is I like James Wan as a filmmaker. I love the Saw franchise, and I really like The Conjuring. Insidious was his one big movie I had not watched before making this video, and if you're curious, meh. But more importantly, he has never been this polarizing. With the exception of the original Saw, basically everyone has been on the same page on the quality of his films. Now, after his good relationship with Warner Brothers, it seems he was given the money to do whatever he wanted, and now we have a movie where half the audience hates it and half loves it. But why? To answer this, let's look at some behind the scenes stuff. Alright, first off, spoilers. I recommend you check out this movie. Everyone has a different experience with it, and it seems to be interesting whether you dislike it or not. So definitely at least give it one watch. You've been warned. So if you're still watching this video, I am assuming you have seen the movie. So I want to start with influences and inspirations. As I'm writing this video, James Wan has said very little to nothing about this film's script. The most we have is he collaborated with his wife, Ingrid, on the story and took the idea to Akila Cooper, and it turned into this madness. Alright, let's look at the movie. I don't know about you, but I have a giant horror movie encyclopedia inside my brain. Good, bad, cheap, and expensive. To describe my experience while watching Malignant, I was mildly irritated for the first half and loved it in the second half. Now, my irritation is pretty subjective, so I don't expect everyone to have this complaint, but this movie is pretty damn derivative of a lot of other ideas. Some of it came from plot details, scare concepts, filmmaking, which could just be tossed up to Wan's style. But the only reason I found it annoying was just because my brain was on overload. I just kept saying, that is from this is from that, and so on. At first, I was going to say it is a big problem with the movie, but as the film continued, it all felt mostly intentional. But we'll talk about intent later. I want to go through all the inspirations and similarities, then talk about why I don't think it's plagiarism. I do believe this film stands on its own for multiple reasons. Also, we'll make fun of a couple things here and there. Alright, let's go. Number 1, the Sam Raimi opening.
Dr. Fields, what the hell is happening?
I tried to subdue him with ECT, but the electroshock had no effect on him. Then all the machines started going crazy. It was like he was drinking the electricity and controlling our machines.
So right off the bat, Malignant asks you to accept a lot. It's clear this movie is trying to go for crazy, but are we supposed to be laughing?
He's broadcasting his thoughts.
We have silly dialogue, rushing following shots, action-packed Dutch angles, and pushes, which is very reminiscent of Sam Raimi. My suspicion is this scene is not trying to be as cartoony as Evil Dead 2, but more just entertaining crazy, more like Drag Me to Hell. It almost feels like a comedy. Every line is performed with a certain intensity and seriousness. You start to wonder if the movie wants you to laugh, especially when you have no prior knowledge about the film. This opening is a giant sucker punch, but in the best way. It grabs your attention and you want to find out what the hell is going on. Also, this line...
It's time. We cut out the cancer.
I don't know about you, but I took this line literally and said, no way this is a cancer monster movie or like cancer zombies or something like that, because we just get a glimpse of what has caused this mess. And the scene goes by so fast that you're at a loss for words when the opening credits appear with not a scary song, but with a heavy metal vibe. Number 2, Paranormal James Wan Inciting Incidents. Finally, we meet Madison, our protagonist, who is in the most cliched, abusive relationship put to the screen, and he bangs her head against the wall. Then we get to our first scary scene when something kills the boyfriend. Notice the set design, the steady zooms, and the slow pacing. This is very in line with Wan's earlier ghost work such as The Conjuring and Insidious. The scene is paced out like a scary ghost setup. We have household appliances turning on, channels changing by themselves. Then we have our first lights out moment. I'm talking past tense right now. After watching the whole movie, we now know the context of these bits. Gabriel can move crazy fast and control electricity. But this shot here, where the cushion reinflates, implies the figure we saw is still sitting there, but is only now slowly getting up. However, is invisible. But I guess the real idea is that Gabriel moved so fucking fast, the cushion didn't have time to inflate? I'm just saying this movie isn't perfect. Anyway, the only view we have of our villain is shrouded in darkness with a black wispiness around it. At first glance, I was positive this is going to be a ghost story. Not to mention, Madison sees Gabriel outside her window appear in darkness and vanish in light. Sound familiar? After Derek's death, we are introduced to a woman whom we've never met, giving a tour of underground Seattle, and she has this experience. So at this point, I was 100% convinced this was a Lights Out ripoff, which got me upset because Juan was a producer on that project. But no time to think about that. Let's move on to number 3, Giallo slasher ascending action. So now we learn this antagonist very much has a physical form, donning a black trench coat, black leather gloves, and seems to be on a murder hunt for the doctors from the opening scene.
First, Dr. Weaver.
Madison has visions of our villain murdering his victims a la Jamie Lloyd from Halloween 4 and 5, having a psychic link with Michael Myers. We can now confirm our antagonist is not a ghost, but a physically contorted person, or perhaps a monster. So, what was up with all this wispy shit? Anyway, the slasher's attire and killing methods should seem familiar to anyone who has seen Italian slashers, also known as Giallo, not to mention the bright colors featured in this scene. But this is no typical slasher. This slasher is all bent up and is very agile, almost like a monster. This is more in line with 90s slashers that are fast, agile moving villains instead of the classic slow and creepy villains like Jason Voorhees in the later Friday the 13th sequels. Mixed in with, I don't know, the Grudge Girl? But Objectively, you'd think that starting out with a ghost movie and turning into a slasher would make the film feel messy and disjointed. While the tone throughout the entire movie is kind of questionable, it works because these scenes have the same setup and style of scares, only there is a different context. We still have the slow buildup and stalking, super quick disappearing, just like classic Michael Myers, being like a ninja, being just behind his victim, but disappearing right as they turn around. When you look at the scenes where Derek dies and the second doctor from the intro dies, they more or less have the same structure. Very small details are changed, and now we have a different context that creates unique scenes in their own right, and the filmmaking style is just altered enough to not feel repetitive. Side note, did this doctor find the One Ring or something? He hasn't aged in 30 years. Also, get some damn squibs. I am sick of CGI blood. It never looks natural. It always just looks like a plug-in. It just doesn't... Number 4. Psychological horror midpoint. The midpoint of this film is when all leads point to Madison being the murderer. We learn from her foster family that she had an imaginary friend growing up. She was committed to a mental asylum at a young age, and the killer even calls her on the phone. This all gets us to wonder if she is a crazy person using her imaginary friend as a scapegoat.
Wait, are you saying that the killer is your imaginary friend?
Right as we process that, our kidnapped friend from earlier falls out of Madison's attic. The killer's costume is there, the murder weapon. The audience is on board with this being an open and shut case. This is classic psychological twist 101, and it's effective, making you think, is this the end of the movie? It has to be her at this point, right? This is in line with plot beats like The Blackcoat's Daughter and The Lighthouse, when our insane main characters swears someone else has done something, but it was them the whole time. So, let's recap everything we've been through. A goofy Sam Raimi bizarre opening, creepy Conjuring style build-up, slasher kill scenes that get things crazy, and psychological super twist. All amassing and building up to... Number 5. The rest of the movie.
What did you do to my sister?
She's not your sister!
So Madison's foster sister finds out about Gabriel, a parasitic conjoined twin that shares the same brain as Madison and has its own face that tears through her skull and takes control of her body to kill people in the most badass of ways. I've heard a lot of criticism about this movie, saying it turns into a basket case at this point in the movie. If only they knew how right they are. What I mean by that is Malignant has the exact same plot as the film Basket Case, directed by Frank Henlotter.
Oh my God, what's that? Dwayne, let me out! Let me out! Dwayne, let me out!
If you have never heard this name before, all you need to know is he directed a film called Frankenhooker. Yep, you get it? The film is about two conjoined twins who are separated, don't like that they got separated, and go on a revenge quest murdering all of the doctors responsible, while our normal-looking protagonist tries to have a normal life, but is difficult because of some kind of psychic link between the two. Now, I'm not claiming plagiarism, I promise. These two films have vastly different experiences to them. But tone-wise, Malignant kinda turns into something as goofy as an 80s B-movie. Malignant sticks the landing, not just on stellar action, but the twist works because on rewatch, it gives a new experience that is just as entertaining. Watching every step of Gabriel driving Madison to insanity, all of the pieces falling into place, just seeing it once is fine, but the entertainment of the film is not diminished by knowing the ending. It is definitely worth even a second watch. Anyway, wrapping this up, Madison triumphantly represses Gabriel into her head, and they all lived happily ever after. The end. Finally, intent. This is the big question mark that everyone has. What is the intention of Malignant? Well, we can't ask Mr. Wan, he hasn't said anything yet, but I have my own interpretation. So I just spent the better part of this video pointing out every trope, every little moment that relates to a past horror movie or horror subgenre. Now, I need to make clear 90% of what I pointed out is a trope, common tropes. This movie is not alone in ripping a lot of this stuff off, but I had to point them out for my main point. If you ask me, this movie's intention was to be a mystery. And I'm not talking about the mystery the characters in the movie have to solve. I mean a mystery for the audience. Our mystery is to try and solve what kind of horror movie is Malignant. I don't think Wan intended for this movie to be scary or necessarily funny. I think it wanted to be fun and awesome. Wan didn't want us to know anything about the movie, so we can naturally wonder what the movie is going to be about. So he made a movie that constantly changes. During Malignant's release, James Wan posted on Instagram, "Don't go in expecting The Conjuring. This is a different beast. Whatever you do, avoid spoilers. Knowing as little as possible is the best way to experience this film." He wanted us to be confused in this movie. He wanted us to question what it is. You may not agree, but that was at least the experience I got, and everything I read hasn't made me think otherwise. Some might read this as, don't read spoilers because you won't want to see my movie, but with whatever problems you may have with the dialogue or the acting, there is plenty of craft in the filmmaking and presentation. The creativity of shots, foreshadowing, pacing is almost perfect. But yeah, there are some problems. The dialogue is a little too silly at times and takes me out of the movie. I can't tell if the acting is intentionally bad or not, and the tone can be really confusing. Overall, I am not saying this movie is flawless, and if you don't like it, I can see why this is not your thing. It's a polarizing movie because it is a slick as hell big budget movie with the plot of Basket Case. I can't believe I could say that sentence. But personally, I really connected with the film. I think Malignant is a really fun and entertaining project made for people who love horror and wanted to see something different. And sure, there are a lot of recycled ideas, but the presentation of these ideas are very unique, exciting, and fun. And at the end of the day, I think that's all there is to the movie. Malignant is a celebration of the horror genre. It's a witch's kettle of the best and worst of horror in one really well-made, yet flawed package. Only other thing I'd change? It should have been released in October. Well, I guess this would have gotten in the way, but goodbye!